Being a professional isn't about the money you make, the position you hold, your level of expertise, or fame. It's the motivation and the attitude you bring to your work. A desire for always learning and improving, and balancing your creative output with getting the business done. Welcome and join the Creating Pros. Hi, and welcome back to Creating Pros. I'm your host, Jim Nettles, and this week I have pulled in somebody. It's taken a little while for us to actually get together and do this. John, I want to thank you for coming on and joining us this week.
Thanks for having me. Will you be able to understand me?
Well, we might be able to have to get you an interpreter, but it'll be all right.
Some subtitles. It's as you know, one of the things I do is on ships, and I find sometimes with some Americans they have difficulty with my accent, so I find myself having to speak like that, which is a very annoying, poor accent.
Let me know when you get down to that Appalachian accent.
My people.
Well, if you take a good Appalachian accent and you speed it up, they'll sound basically like a Londoner.
Yep.
So we'll forgive you. So where are you coming to us, John?
I am in a place called Essex, which is kind of on the edge of London. So it'd be like New Jersey to New York. It's that sort of relationship, really, where we don't want to live in the big city, but we get accused of being the same.
Well, we had the pleasure of getting to meet on a trip when we were over in the UK back in the summer, and I drug you on. So you want to give everybody a little bit of a rundown on who you are and kind of the level.
I should have music playing in the background, shouldn't I? We are the world.
We could have done that. We could have had it rocking and rolling in the back.
Could have the background, and I could have had a picture of Big Ben in the background instead of a scene from a Chinese laundry. So I am John Ryan. Who is John Ryan? I'm from an Irish family, which is a very strong part of my identity, but I'm very proud to be British. Britain comprises England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, so it's different to England. It's like you're from the United States, but your state maybe takes precedent. I left school and was expected to work on a building site, but it was too cold. I couldn't do construction. It's just too cold for me. So I went to university and then came out of there with a good degree. I then worked in something we call it community care. I don't know what you'd call it, social welfare maybe?
Social work, social care.
Yeah, that sort of stuff, yeah. So I worked with a lot of people who had mental health problems, a lot of people with HIV, terminally ill, end of life, giving them advice on how to get some welfare payments, housing, help, things like that. And then I loved it. Best job I ever had. I would still be there now, were it not for the fact that we had a boss came in who decided that I was worth more than I was doing, and suggested that I apply for promotion, which I didn't want to do. So I took redundancy. Now, the thing is, I wanted to write for kids, and no one's going to look at your writing in the UK if you work for local government. So I did some stand-up comedy to get a performing CV with the intention of doing 3 or 4 months and then quitting. But pretty soon it turned out I had a knack for it. So I started getting paid, started getting interesting work, and then carried on doing that. The kids' writing thing went side by side with it. And as my children got older, I felt less in touch with the young children and what they watched and what they didn't watch. Someone approached me to do some stuff on men's health, asked if I had any experience or knowledge. Because I had a degree and a master's degree in that area, and I'd worked in community care, we lumped them together with the performing skills, and it meant I could write and deliver a performing show called Hurt Until It Laughs, which we toured around the UK. I won a couple of little awards, and it snowballed from there. So then I had 2 careers running parallel, the comedy career and the kind of edutainment, I guess you might call it, or infotainment. Then I got asked if I'd entertain the troops, so I went around the world entertaining British, American, Canadian soldiers. And then that led into doing TV warm-ups, and then that led into doing the cruise ships. And so I now call myself a creative rather than a comedian or a writer. That's it. I feel like this is my Miss World statement.
Now,
I'm in a beauty pageant.
it's that thing of no matter what, if you're going to freelance, you kind of wind up discovering you're going in 800 different directions, right? And you don't necessarily always plan out, oh yeah, I'm going to go this way, I'm going to go that way. It's often what are the opportunities that come up, and all of a sudden you discover, oh, I kind of like this, I don't like that. You got a knack for it. Yeah, we were talking before you got started, came on, that you've been writing for TV, some of the kids' TV over there. You mentioned that you'd written for Teletubbies, and
so that was one of my first jobs in TV was. So I'm from a very working class immigrant area, and most British TV back in the early sort of 2000s was aimed very much at white middle class children. And so for us, it was hard for our kids to maybe sometimes relate to it. One of the things they had on Teletubbies was a little section where there would be a television would appear in their stomach, and a child would come and say, "Hello, my name is Jim. Today I'm going to go and work with my dad. Come and see." And they'd go off. Because children learn through mimicry is one of the theories. So kids would watch, copy, and replicate. So I met someone who said, "Yeah, you could stand up," and I explained that I wanted to actually write for kids. He worked at a company, put me in touch, blah, blah, blah. And then I went for a meeting at which I said, look, it's hard for working class children. They want to see kids they can relate to and identify with. So black kids, Asian we call Indian, Pakistanis, not Chinese. Chinese are Chinese. So in my community, that was predominantly those people, Greeks, Italians. And so then it snowballed from there. Then I got bits on other programs and started writing scripts. I loved it. It was great fun.
So what really pulls you and keeps you in comedy? You say you kind of got a knack for it, but what really keeps you working in comedy? I mean, comedy is hard. That's for everybody I know that does it. Comedy is hard, and I
think that comedians, there's a difference between being a comic and being a comedian. I'm a funny guy, so if we worked in a baker's, we would have fun, right? But most comedians don't have fun. So when I was at school, I played on the soccer team, I was in the swimming team, I had girlfriends, I used to fight. I was what we would call a kind of, like an average guy. The comedian tends to be not that guy. Comedian tends to be the guy who doesn't make friends, isn't particularly sporty, and is on the edge watching and creating their own world. And so consequently, when I first started doing comedy, I thought they would all be really funny, naturally funny people, but most of them have got some form of mental health issue going on, stemming from their childhood, in my experience. And consequently are unable to achieve and maintain relationships and are not always the best dads or friends to have. Because one of the things about being a comedian, it's about being selfish and having an ego, which doesn't necessarily make you good company. As you can see, I'm pretty dull. I'm pretty boring, I'm not like, hey, here's a joke for you. So, I'm more sort of like, yeah.
Well, no, I mean, I've got a few friends that are on that side of the business, and I would entirely agree that there's a lot of connection between people who do comedy and mental health, right? There's direct relationship. A lot of the time it was, you learn to be self-deprecating. You learn to be funny because it's a defense mechanism, and it's either I may have to get in a fight or I can be a smart ass. Now, generally I'm a smart ass anyway, but looking at things from that space, and as with anything else, when you get in the business, when you're in an industry, when you start getting into that circle, you start to get to know folks, and you get to know people, and you travel with them, you do a lot of shows together, things like that. And it kind of strikes me because the other side of your life, you're doing comedy, you're doing the mental health. You talked about it as kind of edutainment, right?
Yeah.
And so this is one of the things I found really interesting, is that idea of how you're crossing the borders between the two. Because if you go and I do a lot of talks, and I've done a lot of workshops and things like that, But if you don't keep it engaging, you don't keep it entertaining, you lose people, right? And they don't retain what you're talking about. So looking at the space that you're working in on that side of your life, what led you to, I mean, obviously coming from working in social work and coming from trying to help people and that idea of connecting with people, because I think this is one of the strongest points of quote unquote comedy classically. I mean, is that idea of how do I connect with people? How do I tell the story? How do I get people to see the point of view and exchange points of view and do it in a way that connects?
I think the most important skill is to listen. Mark Twain said you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. You should listen twice as much as you speak, but people rarely do. And some people don't listen to learn. They listen to wait for an opportunity to jump in with what they want to say. So engagement comes from taking an interest in the other person. And you've seen my shows. So my shows aren't typical comedy shows. I don't pick on anyone because I believe that that's bullying. It's all inclusive. People say, oh, you can't laugh about anything anymore. You never could. There was never a time in history when you could laugh at anything. And when I was growing up, you knew you'd said the wrong thing because you got punched in the face. So I've never been punched in the face because I've said the wrong thing. So I know not to. So therefore, I steer clear. So I know with you guys, freedom of speech is such an important thing. But for me, freedom of speech comes with responsibilities. And most people do not have the maturity or the understanding to use freedom of speech. I'm not advocating fascism, but I am saying some people need to do freedom of keep your mouth shut.
Well, and that's this is one of those things I am an advocate and a believer in as well. I mean, I do a lot of speaking and talks about freedom of speech, privacy, data security, these kinds of things. So I agree 100%. You have a right to say what you want to say, but you have to understand there's responsibility to that. There's repercussions for that. And sometimes you're going to get punched for that.
Words are hurtful. We have a great saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. But the fact is that names will cause long-lasting psychological damage. And so you tell a child it's stupid every day, that child will grow up kind of believing it's stupid. So already we can see the power of that word. We use labels and things all the time, create stereotypes, and people are hurt and suffer from them. But stereotypes can also be funny, but it's how you choose to use them. So I think words are very, very powerful. And I have an ability to use words in a way that's humorous, that makes people have those kind of from aha to haha moments. And that's where my mental health work comes in. So I can talk about suicide, but I'll talk about it like we would if we were working together. So my friend tried to take his own life 5 times, and I visited him in hospital each time. And like time 4 and 5, I said to him, look, you're just not very good at this. Maybe it's not for you. Now, there you go. We've mentioned suicide. You smiled. Let's open up a whole new area for us to go into. But generally speaking, we don't talk about suicide because people go, well, how can a comedian talk about suicide? Well, no, let's talk about it. We need to talk about stuff.
Well, if we look at kind of that classical move of the court jester, it's the ultimate level of truth telling. If you do it well, and if you tell the story well, and you gather that attention. So do you find that medium works well to open up communication?
Yeah, it does. And it's not about, we don't laugh at, we laugh with, we laugh together. The humor is just the kind of take the rough edges off of the subject. So I'll talk about men's health, mental health, suicide, cancers, but all with funny anecdotes and funny stories. It doesn't detract from the subject matter, but what it does do is make people feel comfortable and it's palatable. So, for example, I was brought up in an Irish family and I had dozens of uncles, and they more or less all died or were finished by the late 50s, including my father. And it was all from industrial diseases, lifestyle, smoking, drinking, eating the wrong food. And I remember thinking that Irish people just died at that age. And I didn't understand why all my friends, dads and uncles, they had old people in their families. Whereas we didn't. We just had old women. But then I looked into it and found out, well, actually, it's because of opportunities and lifestyle and socializing and education and all the rest of it. So that's not me being a preachy, PC, woke kind of person. But statistically, if you're born as a black boy 6 miles away from me, your life is going to be significantly different to my son's. So that's fact. So how do we deal with that? Whose responsibility is it to deal with it? So yeah, let's talk about these things.
So looking at that and looking at the company you've got with partner and where you guys do give a lot of these kinds of mental health talks, things like this, what are the areas you focus on, and what are you seeing today? Because I mean, obviously there's global stressors going on with, maybe we're going to blow up the planet. Maybe the economy is going to completely and totally collapse. Yeah. All sorts of the good stuff that's going on, right? We're in a period of global challenge. So I feel sure you've got to be seeing some of that with the crowds coming in.
But I think that look, ultimately the big problem is putting food on the table, raising your kids, right? I've got friends in America who we here would call middle class. They have a nice house, nice cars, nice life. They're working 3 jobs. What kind of madness is that? Well, yeah, you take 2 weeks leave a year. And if you take it, you're looked down upon. Somebody needs to go, hang about. This ain't right. But if you do that, some will go, you're a communist or you're a socialist. And then language kicks in and off you go. It's that thing of people, I think there's a spiritual or a moral void that people are trying to fill. And they try and fill it with material things. I'm not a religious person, but they fill it with material stuff, thinking that will kind of somehow satisfy whatever needs they have. When I worked in community care, I was privileged to be with people when they died. It doesn't make me a suspect or anything, but I was there in the last moment. So I've seen regrets. I've heard stories of love. I've seen very powerful moments. And if you understand life lasts for but a moment, then you can then enjoy it.
So I think that's an important story, is the idea of you can choose what you do with life, right? To an extent. We all have the situations we're born into. We all have the situations that we start from, and that's outside of our control. But at a certain point, we start gaining control over decisions, options. How do you take, in your background, and I mean, recognizing that the UK is radically different from a lot of the way things are here in the States. I've worked out of Ireland, I've worked out of the UK, I've worked out of other places too. And when we were over there this summer, I've spent a fair amount of time over there. My wife had never been to Europe, and even now she's still kind of reflecting on culturally how different things are between there and here. And this is, I think, one of the important things is that there is the nature of, on a personal level, fundamentally people want to take care of friends and family. You got to raise the kids. Like you say, put food on the table, take care of the basics.
Yeah.
And that's common everywhere you ever go. How do you kind of face some of those challenges? And I mean, looking at the things that you've had, like you say, the privilege of being there at the time of people's greatest challenges and death and facing those kinds of things, because none of us are getting out of here alive anyway, right?
No.
How do you find that relating those stories helps people that are maybe not facing any challenges anywhere near that bad? But we all know we look at the dark night of the soul for some reason or another all the time, right? It happens to everybody, period.
The Dark Night of the Soul sounds like the Meatloaf album that was never made. You need to write that.
Give me time. Nobody wants
your challenge.
Nobody wants to hear me sing, but
people live in denial, don't they? I think so. People think, "Oh, I'll just get through the day, just get through the day." But then, before you know it, the week has gone, the month has gone, the year has gone, and it's why? Why do you have to live like that? What do you need? Basically, I think when I do my mental health talks, so yesterday I did 4, and I start each session with a simple question: what do you want? What do you want out of life? And then I listen to guys coming out with on a car or money, on a gorgeous partner, on holiday, blah, blah, blah. You go, all you want is health. That's it. You ain't got health, you ain't got nothing. But people think that means going to the gym, drinking water, not drinking beer. No, 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 no. It means a basic level where you can go out your front door without having to sit down. You know, you don't need someone. If you can get up in the morning, you put a light on, brush your teeth, and go to a toilet that flushes, you're ahead of 90% of the planet. So then appreciate what you have, but then think of what you want next. I was always fascinated when I was a kid, because we were, we were poor. We were kind of Jerry Springer audience types, right? And where we lived, which would be, because I only know New York. So it would be like living in the Bronx and looking at Manhattan, lower Manhattan, and thinking, how did they get that? And so I used to ask people, when I had a job, I would say to the boss, how did you become the boss? And then he explained it to me. And then I thought, so take responsibility for your own actions, work hard, pay for what you get, but always understand you won't always get what you pay for. I thought, what is that simple? That's it. That's it, basically. Yeah. If you want the big car, get the big car. Get it on finance. People don't know you got it on finance, but you got the big car. But it's about what you want out of life. Happiness, health, peace, contentment. I'm the most content man you'll ever meet, I think.
Which is really kind of going back. That's really kind of unusual for people in creative spaces.
Yeah. But then I had a barbecue in the summer, and I did a gig on the Saturday. And on the way home, I'm dropping the guy off, and he was telling me about how his wife has left him. He's sleeping on people's couches, and life's tough. And I said, you know what, man, come back with me. We're having a barbecue tomorrow. You can hang out with us. And because my partner is really cool, I could tell her or not tell her. She came out with coffee and said, there's a man asleep on my couch. Who is he? I went, oh, that's Dave. She went, when were you going to tell me about Dave? I went, well, we got in at 2 this morning. You were asleep. I didn't want to wake you. And, you got up to bring me some coffee. So, okay. So Dave stays for the day. We had the barbecue, 30 or 40 people. And he had a great time. But at the end said, where were all the other comedians? I said, well, you were here. Yeah, but where's all the rest of them? You work. You've been doing this 20 years. You know everyone. I said, I know them, but I don't socialize with them. One of my favorite anecdotes I tell people is a night when I came home I did a theatre, got a standing ovation, got in the car, came home, opened the front door, and as soon as it closed, I heard a voice say, did you remember to get the milk? Just grounded.
And one of the things that I frequently teach, and this is both in creative businesses, but I mean, I've done the same thing for attorneys. I've done the same thing in healthcare. I've done the same thing in IT, is talking about the power of creativity. If you do not have creative outlets, if you don't find those ways to express yourself, I don't care. It's not necessarily about commercialing, right? It could be cooking, gardening. You may be just painting or writing stories for your own edification, right?
Yeah, do it. Yeah.
So is there something that you've seen with people where that gives new meaning, new purpose, or just changes people, that idea of creative expression?
Yeah, so one of the projects we did, I have 2 types of work, okay, in terms of the kind of health stuff. So I have one where I'll come in and do a presentation or training, or I'll send someone in that works for us that I've co-written a little show for, okay? Then the other side of it, we do projects. And our projects, we'd do men in North Carolina over 50 who are single, living on their own, okay? So we want to look at the mental health of that group. So we get some guys from that group together, have a little chat, talk to them, get some funny anecdotes, get a feel for what they're thinking. Then we'd get a theatre space, and try to encourage them to either do prose, poetry, comedy, play an instrument, do a painting, something to do with the arts, or stand at the door and sell tickets. And then whilst doing the workshops, we'd also have a clinical person, a nurse or a doctor or some kind of health professional who, you know what, by the way, Jim, while you're here, look, go and have a chat to Richie and, you take your blood pressure. Then while he's doing your blood pressure, start talking and there you go. So it's about, with the project side of it, it's trying to give these guys, just because you're 55, one of my heroes was a woman called Lena Kennedy, who before J.K. Rowling was one of Britain's most successful writers ever, had her first book published at 67. She was a millionairess when she died. So there's no time limit on it. But it's just that whoever tells you what you can do, you think about it, you're only ever told what you can't do.
Well, and there's a couple of groups I speak to kind of frequently, and a lot of the time what I find are people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s that are, I always wanted to write a book. I always wanted to do X, and now they're like, well, should I bother doing it now that I'm at this age? Or in the case of a couple of people, we've been working with them to do their first books, and we're tired. They get the first things out the door, and the first question they ask is, why did I wait so long? Or what could I have done? And then I've also had the pleasure of working with and speaking to a lot of groups with people that are in their teenagers, 20s, that looking in and encouraging them, just go do it. What's the biggest thing that you've seen kind of in all the work that you guys do around that? Because one of the biggest things always for me boils down to fear. What is everybody afraid of? And that tends to be the thing that throws the brakes on a lot of people.
I think a lot of it is realizing what you can do. So I used to have a running joke. My father passed away about 11 years ago. Okay. But I still talk to him every day. And I say to people, if you're bereaved, just talk to him. I even find myself touching the radiators when I come in, like he used to. So, I still talk to him. And I would sometimes ring him up and say, can you put BBC Two on right now, which is a television station? He'll go, right, what is it? I'm like, show jumping. He goes, why am I watching show jumping? I said, you never told me I could be a show jumper. I could have been a show jumper, Dad. If you'd get me a pony when I was a kid. He goes, last week you wanted to be a yachtsman. But it's all about, I never knew that I could be anything other than a builder, because that's all that was in my environment. And then part of people think you can't write because they think, well, to write, you've got to be from the Hamptons, or how is some guy from the middle of Humpty Dumpty nowhere in the Appalachians or Arkansas, who's going to read his book? Well, you know what? Someone will. And even if nobody reads your book, just write it. But it's that, isn't it? Your knowledge can only increase within a circle of the experiences that you have. I'm all about experiential learning and transitional learning. So, and I'm terrible. My missus sometimes will go, oh God, no. I'm like, babe, I'm away on a ship for a week. This guy plays the accordion. She'll go, you're not getting an accordion. But, so do it. Live life, have that embrace, have that zest and zing and kind of drive for it.
One of the things that, because I'm kind of laughing because there's a reason we've got glass shop and all this stuff, because I love playing with glass. There's nothing that will clear your mind like playing with something a couple of 1,000 degrees, right?
Brilliant.
Especially the first time you drop it on. It'll wake you up. One of the things that I frequently still do and teach and work with is when people discover that they can do something that they thought they couldn't do, right? Or it's that whole idea of, because again, publishing, I deal with a lot of writers, work with a lot of publishers. That notion of the first time you get that book in your hand, you get that little rush of, I've got something, I created it. And this is something that will outlive me. It's something that can get global reach. I mean, the best-selling book I still have is a novella. It's a murder mystery where somebody's killing gnomes and turning them into garden statues. That stupid thing gets me gnomes sent to me from all over the world. I've had gnomes come to me from Japan and Australia. You never know what the little thing is that's going to make a difference. You're talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, when we look at authors, when we look at creators, no matter what, you get to tell your story. You may be telling the same story that's been told for thousands of years, but it's through your eyes, it's through your viewpoint. And that to me is the part of the power of creativity, is that you can find meaning in things that you wouldn't see otherwise because you have to tell the story. And
but creativity, I try to explain to people, creativity is a discipline.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just put on a smoking jacket, take out a pen and go, the idea will come to me. So when I've given little writing classes, I'll say to people, sit yourself down at 9:30 in the morning with a pen and a piece of paper and write something. But I've got writer's block. Look out the window and describe what you see, and then just see where it takes you. Oh, is that how you do it? Yeah, that's it. It's just that simple. It's a discipline. Then at 5 o'clock, I stop.
You know, writer's block is one of my favorite topics. I was on a panel with Chelsea Quinn Yarborough a number of years ago, Grandmaster. And I was like, what do you do about writer's block? She goes, I look at the stack of bills next to me and I get back to writing.
Yeah, there you go. It's not creative. It's a discipline. And so in the same way that my degree was in the social sciences, so if I had to write an assignment on the Italian unification of 1871 or whatever it was, well, I'll be the same with how do I write a story about, a boy who has his bicycle stolen. That's the same. It's just you apply the same principles to it, which is why when people look at my CV, they'll go, wow, you've done a poem and you've written a song and you've written a play and yeah, because you give me the subject and I see the challenge and go, yeah. During lockdown, I built an extension, okay, because I had no work. So I thought, okay, I'll do something else then. So she said, what are you doing? I said, I'm watching YouTube. Why are you watching YouTube? I said, I'm going to learn how to dig some footings and foundations for an extension. She said, who are you doing that for? I said, us. She went, oh, goodness. Then her friends would say to her, are you crazy letting him do that? She went, he's fine. He knows what he's doing. He's got his theories. Now people come to my house and say, would you build one for me? It's within my skill. You can increase your skill set. Don't be limited by what you're told that you can't do. Think to yourself, well, what can I do?
So looking at everything that you've done in life, right? Going back to the good old days, what would be the most important thing you could tell somebody that's sitting there, whether they're 20 or 90?
Just have a dream and just think, yeah, I'll try it. Try it. If you only go to a restaurant, just try it. Unless it's dessert. Dessert is only apple pie. However, just try different stuff. Talk to people. Say hello to storekeepers. When you talk to your bank, say to them, how are you? When you go to your doctors, say, how are you today? And don't limit yourself. I have a tick list of things I want to do. So one of the things that was on there was I wanted to write a poem, get paid to write a poem. And then somebody approached me and said, look, do you think you could write a poem? I'm like, I am your man. Wrote it. We filmed it. Again, won a little award for it. Got all the news channels up and down the UK. It's a poem about how to talk to people with cancer. Now, what's a comedian doing writing poems like that? Well, because I'm not a comedian. Don't take that label. Don't accept that label. Be that creative.
Well, and I think that's an important thing too, is when you embrace creative energy, when you embrace that creative life, all of these things are just mediums. It's a way of expressing the idea. It's a way of exploring the idea. And then it becomes, what's the discipline? What's the skill set you're developing to embrace that medium?
Yeah. The ship you saw me on, I believe something like 70% of the passengers were American. And some of the ships I work on, there'll be 85, 90% American. And the thing is, of course, Americans don't get British comedy. They don't get British humor, apparently. But what is British humor? There is only humor. If you have that cup of tea you had, if you don't put that in the dishwasher, you're in trouble. It doesn't matter if you live in Pakistan, the Yemen, or Manchester in the UK. It's the same the world over. And so you look at what we have in common, and like then work from there. I'm baffled by this phrase woke, because when we were growing up, we didn't have woke. We just had good manners, but good manners have gone now. The reason why you have to tell people not to be misogynistic is because otherwise they will be, or racist, because they will be. And so we need some sort of formal recognition that if we're all going to get on together, we've got to kind of give way a little bit. And I think that's something that's gone certainly over the last sort of 10, 15 years.
Or more. But yeah.
I think as creatives, we can bring each other together. I was on a ship and went to dinner with 6 Americans, 3 couples, myself and another performer, and we sat down and they were saying, hey, we really enjoyed your shows. Well, thank you, it's really nice. And that, and, you should come to the States. You'd be a big hit over here. And I'm like, well, I appreciate that. Thank you. And the girl who was a singer, they were saying to her, you should be in Vegas. She said, I couldn't live in America. Why? She said, well, I'd be worried about my kids going to school and getting shot. One of the Americans said, well, if we sorted out guns, if we armed our teachers, it wouldn't be an issue. At which one of the other Americans went, well, here we go. I'm not going to sit here and listen to this. Come on. Threw their serviette down, said to me and the girl, please accept my apology. We're not going to sit and talk to these people. And off they went. And as soon as they'd gone, the guy who said it went, do you see what we have to contend with? And you go, wow, there is in that, in itself, there is just so much tension and conflict. And to go from 0 to 100, 15 years ago, that conversation wouldn't have happened. And so what do we do as comics? We try to see this, or as creatives, see it, draw attention to it, maybe come up with maybe the solution is shut your mouth. Because when we were brought up, you would have shut your mouth. If you were woke, you would have shut your mouth. So, what do we do?
The idea of discourse is largely gone, and I'm hoping we can bring it back. Mm-hmm. And I think that is part of the job of the creative community. And I think is to create tool sets, to create story, to create environments where conversations can happen, where real discourse can happen, where ideas can be debated. But the other side of that too has to be, we have to be able to all come sit at the table and not agree.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with not agreeing, because, humanity evolved through conflict, not through compromise. And we didn't get out of the caves by sharing the food with the next tribe. The lions don't get confronted by the wildebeest saying, it's not fair you keep hunting us. There is going to be conflict, and how you navigate it, how you learn to walk through it. What we have now is a race to the bottom of isms, and who's going to come up with the biggest ism. They win the argument. It's crazy. However, as creatives, we have to operate in this medium and think, well, what's the solution? Where's the way around it? And I'm baffled when I see comics, comedians especially, espousing these views on, Trump's this, Biden's this. And then these guys go back home to their bedsit studio with one enamel mug and a spoon. And you think, mate, you want to sort your own life out before you start trying to put everyone else to rights. But nobody says that.
You can't fix the world till you fix your home first.
There you go. What's that? Don't throw stones in great glass houses, or put your own house in order. Is one of those kind of things, isn't there, really? But yeah, you go. You saw my show. I talk about America's, the greatest nation on the planet, and yet your only 2 options for leader are Trump and Biden. Is really. I'm not saying that we've got it right or wrong, or anyone else, but come on. You judge a man by his shoes. If he looks after his shoes, he's got pride in himself. So our Prime Minister wears a suit and keeps his mouth shut. We like that. And again, there's comedy there, isn't there? There's comedy there. There's tension. There's like a minefield. Where we're going to go with this.
but I mean, and admittedly, I've watched Parliament since I was in high school. Um,
Yeah, it's hilarious. It's
there,
hilarious.
there's great joy out of watching that, and the challenge I think now is that Congress is starting to look a little bit more like Parliament. Um, we're throwing more things at each other. Um,
Yeah.
but I think this all kind of boils down to, a book you guys wrote, right?
Yeah.
Post-apocalyptic.
Yes. So, well, I'm fascinated by whenever you see movies in the future, it's always chaos. There's always chaos. And then I wondered what. There's a great movie called Idiocracy. Have you ever seen it?
You mean the documentary? Yeah.
So there's that, and it's just about how ultimately we all end up being stupider and simpler because we have shorter attention spans. And so myself and Darren, my friend, who we've been friends for 30 years, he's an electrician. Like he's one of these guys who'd like to write a book. So I said, come on in, let's write a book. We looked at what would happen if all the humans were gone, but they left genetically modified animals behind. But because humans are inherently fault-ridden, maybe some of these animals would be. So we came up with a group of genetically modified animals who were designed to defend and attack, who'd be left to their own devices and just disintegrated into like a Monty Python kind of crew. And then we just thought, instead of having a cat with superpowers, psychic powers, why don't we have a cat with psychic powers who gets it wrong? But in that typically British way, we'll go, oops. Oops is one of the greatest words in the British language. You don't want to hear oops on an aeroplane or at the dentist's. So we just came up with this idea of then, well, how would the world look if there were just these kind of dystopian animals running around? Ducks want to take over. I never trusted ducks since I was a kid. So ducks want to take over the planet. This team are in an old cave that was where the human technology is. The ducks can't find it. So they keep coming up with ideas to get this team out of the cave so they can capture the team, take the cave. It's a simple, stupid premise. And the rule is that nobody gets hurt. So, and it's just silly. It's a silly comic romp.
So what's the name of the book?
The book is called Tag Tinsel. The first one is called A Mission Most Foul because it's about ducks. And in this story, the ducks persuade a wolf, the big bad wolf, that the pigs are there to be eaten. But the wolf doesn't want to eat them. He just wants them to keep quiet because his wife's had a baby. And then the pigs are scared of the wolf, write to Tag Tinsel's team, come and rescue us. The ducks, of course, then will capture the team and capture the technology. The second book is about two penguins who want to have a baby, but they're both male penguins. So there's an issue there straight away. And they come across what they think is an egg, but it's actually a timer from a nuclear device, which one of them sits on and tries to get it to hatch. Now, the ducks want this nuclear device, have to get the team out of the cave to save the penguins, capture the team, capture the device, take over the world. And it's just silly. But there's nothing wrong with silly.
Absolutely not.
Very Pratchett-esque. Do you know Terry Pratchett? Did you read Discworld, one of those books?
I've read.
So it's from that kind of,
in fact, the other day, I saw a picture the other day. It was Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett done during the days when they were working on Good Omens.
Brilliant.
And Terry Pratchett goes and says, "I wore white so they would know who the good guy was."
Yeah, brilliant. But it's just this whole thing of we're grown men. Why can't we fantasize and be silly? My problem is because physically I look like a guy from the hood. As I was growing up, I was from that background. Because I don't drink beer and have a long beard and listen to heavy metal music, I would invariably turn up somewhere where there was a Pratchett convention, and they'd all look at me like I'd come to beat everyone up. And then the whole thing about not judging people, I'm like, what? Why would you think that? Well, because of how you look and sound and where you're from. You go, no, because in here we're all the same. And then writing is a great vehicle for sorting in here out.
Mm-hmm. It's great therapy.
Yeah, and it's good because then it connects you with the world. I remember when Harry Potter came out, and I didn't want to read it because I decided that I wanted my kids to have a book that they knew about that I didn't, so it would be their world. So I never read it. I never watched any of the movies. I haven't got a clue. But I saw how it made them embrace reading, and it kind of opened up the world of literature to a whole kind of new tranche of kids that never would have looked at a book.
One of the biggest problems I think that we're looking at today is the number of people reading is continuing to decline. Unless, of course, it's looking at pick your social media channel and actually sit down and read.
Well, it's a whole TikTok thing, isn't it? You took 30 seconds attention span, 15 seconds on Instagram. In our book, one of the lead characters, you're not sure if it's a guy or a girl, but it doesn't matter. That's the whole point. It doesn't matter if it's a guy or a girl. Well, we need to gender it. It doesn't matter what people are. The strong character is a female. We didn't write that to be a female. It's just that when we wrote the character, it just turned out that way. It was based kind of a bit on my sister and on a girl I went to school with. But it's that thing of, I remember when I did here before at high school, you do something called A levels, and you looked at Shakespeare. And I remember deconstructing Shakespeare, Othello, and I didn't like it because I said to the teacher, but I don't want it explained like this. I want to see it as a love story where a guy really goofs up, listens to the wrong dude, and that's all I need to know. I don't want to know about the history of, gender and race and class and the struggles, because I was 17. I just liked the book.
All into the story.
I hope I haven't just explained Othello to you.
Well, Shakespeare's stories, while there's a great deal of complexity and mechanics in the way they're written, they're simple stories at the core. Simple conflicts. How to approach the world.
That's all life is. That's all life is. I think, for me, one of the greatest TV series of the last 10 years is Only Murders in the Building. The Steve Martin vehicle. Martin Short.
I've seen the first couple.
It's just so well written, so clever, and it's just nonsense, but it's greatly written nonsense. And instead of, like, I love films and movies where it's about the human condition. And I can't watch Marvel and the Avengers and DC stuff. The guy just got shot. Why is he still running? I don't get it. So I even struggled with Star Wars. I'm like, oh, come on. But I appreciate that there's room in the great kind of atmosphere of creativity for something for everyone. But it's about what you want and how you're going to get it. That's all stories to me come down to.
Well, I was watching the first of the new 3 Doctor Who's with Tennant back, and pure straight up classic ridiculousness, but great story.
Yeah, I remember going to New York in 2004, I think, staying with my buddies and talking to my son on the phone, and he said hello to everyone, and they were like, what's this Doctor Who your son is talking about? He had to go to watch Doctor Who, and I said, oh yeah, Doctor Who is about a time traveling, regenerating being that solves and saves humanity. Okay, we watch it, and I remember about 3 minutes in them going, well, this guy's spaceship is like a phone booth, aren't you? And he doesn't have any weapons other than a screwdriver with a light on the end. I'm like, yeah. Well, but it would never get made in America. But we love goofy stupid in the UK. We don't want all our stars to look like chiseled Greek gods. Me and you could be the heroes in a British movie,
Well, it's like John Nettles, right? I mean, distant cousin, but acted and been in all sorts of stuff. But yeah.
Yeah.
Tom Baker is still my doctor. He was still my first doctor with the bad special effects.
Everybody has to have their own doctor. Tom Baker's my doctor.
I mean, that's where I started.
But who's your James Bond?
Sean Connery.
Yeah, I've just finished reading Roger Moore's book. Very funny man.
Yeah, I think I've got that one. I haven't read it yet, but I think it's on the stack.
Yeah,
but yeah,
very very funny guy, man. Very funny guy. But then again, we're looking at these stories, which are essentially the same. James Bond is still being made now as he was in the 60s. It's the same stories because all a story is something happening to someone. That's it. End of. There's no science to it. So sit down and write it.
Mm-hmm. How do things go wrong, and how do you make them worse?
Yeah, there you go. And then you can extrapolate it. But you go, Goldilocks went to the forest, saw the cottage, saw the porridge, tried the chair, tried the bed, got chased by bears. That's not much of a story. However, there's your story. It's
still a classic story.
It's classic. Sorry if I spoiled the end of it. I should have gone, spoiler alert. I'm not finished it yet. But yeah, and so I was always, as a child, I used to get quite sad when I got near the end of a book because I knew it was going to be over. I'm like, I don't want it to end.
Yeah, I had a friend on last night. We were talking because she just wrapped an 8-book series, pushing 1 million words, and it was that.
Wow.
Oh, wait, I'm done with those characters.
Yeah, it's that. And like even with our Tag Tinsel stories, we have 5, and but then in our heads we're planning spin-offs and movies and I said to Darren, of course we should, because that's what keeps the creative going, that hope. But where we differ is that it's written, it's not mine now, I've given it away, but he's still sometimes, when you, especially when you write collaboratively, he'll go, but that sentence is really important. I'm like, well, then keep it in. And keep it in. It doesn't matter, because once you give that to a publisher or to a director or a producer, they will chop it and change it. And, how many movies have you seen where you'll go, this is a great story, it's based on a true story. When you actually look at the events, 3 characters are made up for artistic creativity.
And then the entire plots, the based on a true story was, well, this guy did a thing. Beyond that, you can throw most of it out the window.
What's the classic one where America saved the war by breaking the Enigma code, by finding it? Submarine or something.
It's not Das Boot. It's now I got to remember because I haven't watched it in probably 30 years.
And then it's that thing, though, isn't it? Then movies become facts. People go, oh, like Napoleon. Have you seen the Napoleon movie that?
Not yet.
Joaquin Phoenix is in. I mean, you go, wow, I know you got to Hollywood it a little bit, but come on, man.
Well, but if Waterloo turns out differently, let me know.
Yeah, the 54th Oklahoma Cavalry turned up and kicked some butt, man.
You never know what you're going to get.
It's so funny on the ships. One of the routines I do is about how important the British Army is for America. How important we are. And I mean, it's silly, really, because our army's got something like 63,000 men, which is not even a third of one of the militias in the Deep South, right? And this guy afterwards said, you're a funny guy, but you got to stop saying that, man, because you've not saved us before. I'm like, all right, it's just words. But it's not true. I'm like, well, okay. If it wasn't for us, you'd all be speaking German. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, if it wasn't for the French, you'd all still be drinking tea. Where does it end? Let's be creative. Let's. I
am still drinking tea. Thank you very much.
I like the way you keep product placement keeps coming in there. Is this normal, everyday, regular tea, or is it herbal tea, or what is it?
No, that is a Irish breakfast.
Irish breakfast tea.
Yeah, it's a blend from a friend of mine, but yeah, I tend to prefer the really nice Scottish breakfast that would be pitch black as coffee and strong, and you can just about walk across the top of it. But
Yeah, and again, it's funny that on the ships I don't drink tea because the water's never hot enough, so I just drink coffee. But at home, I never drink coffee.
Yeah, the big tea collection is downstairs, but
Yeah, you're good to have some enjoyment in life. And then again, go back to my mental health stuff. That's one of the things I say to people: have a little treat, have something that you enjoy. Don't feel guilty. Have a guilty sin. Have something just for you, because we're told not to be selfish, and so then consequently, when you do something for yourself, you feel bad.
well, John, I appreciate all the time. Is there anything we haven't dove into tonight or into this morning that you want to hit on?
Dolly Parton. Dolly Parton is the greatest human being ever to come from those fair shores of the colonies that you live in. And why can't she be president? What is wrong with you all? The answer is right there.
I don't think she wants
She's come from nothing. She is the living embodiment of the American dream. She come
Absolutely.
from nothing, she come from nowhere. She's her talent. She's a brilliant example of an empowered, powerful woman. And she can sing. And she's got long nails as well. So don't think just because you've got long nails, you can't put the garbage out.
Well, and she also just did a wonderful job with, I think it was Dallas Cowboys as cheerleader. So,
yep. Still, mate, we'll have her. We'll swap her. You're going to have Mick Jagger. Okay.
I'll take Mick as long as, anyway, that'd be fine. He was over here not long.
You're negotiating. Can't believe we're horse trading humans. This is probably how trafficking works, isn't it? I think she's going to be worth a Ronnie Wood as well as you can have Rod Stewart as well.
No, just keep it. Well, John, if anybody's interested in all the great stuff you're doing, where can they find out more about you?
I'm like,
I'm like
Mother Teresa. That's what I'm like Mother Teresa, aren't I?
I would not go that far, but
I'm like that. There you go. There's my picture.
It was worth a shot. But if people need more of John Ryan, where can they find
more Johnny time?
More Johnny time.
My company is called Happy to Health You. Happy to Health You. We currently have 3 big projects on the go. One is raising awareness of suicide in the farming community, which is a universal theme for America as well as the UK. Our other project is called 1 in 6, which is men who've been the victims of sexual abuse, which is particularly difficult. But there's not much comedy in that, as you'd imagine. But it's trying to encourage the guys to find other creative outlets. And obviously the third big one is just on suicide awareness, which currently here is main cause of death for men under 50. Well, I'm safe now. I'm out of that danger zone. I'm now into heart attack territory, and I have to fear the staircase. That's my biggest threat to my life is the staircase. So,
well, they'll jump out at you.
I'll try and get some funny with that. My Instagram is @ComedyJohnRyan, and drop me a line. Let me go. I didn't like what you said about we'd all be still drinking tea if it wasn't for the French. Well, get over it.
I'm still drinking tea regardless. Well, John, I appreciate you coming over and hanging out with me, and hopefully we'll get you back over on this side of the pond. It'll probably be at least another year before I get back over there. So, but definitely appreciate you coming in this morning. We'll be talking soon.
And you should say, y'all have a good day now.
Y'all have a good day now.
Oh, there you go.